All right, Simon, let's start with the international news. Of course, a very big week for Apple with the launch of the iPad 2. Is Apple still leader of the pack?
I think very much so. 15 million iPads were sold last year, and we're yet to see another competitor convincingly break into the market. They're going to come en masse this year, but Apple certainly has a lead over them. And
obviously
a big one.
Not available in South Africa yet. Any inside info as to when it will be?
Unfortunately not. I expect that the wait will be not quite as long as it was for the first iPad, but I doubt we'll see it before mid-year.
So maybe just before the Apple iPad 3 on that side. All right, another product launched this week, of course, on South African shores, the Nintendo 3DS. In terms of gaming trends, what does this mean for us?
I think it's interesting watching Nintendo adapt to a new environment. Before, in that mobile space, their competitor was Sony. Now we're seeing the rise of the mobile phone and app stores more prevalently. And you're seeing the iPod Touch, for example, and MP3 players becoming competition for Nintendo and Sony. Nintendo's answer to that is to introduce new technologies like 3D, just throw itself way out there because nobody else is really doing that, except for LG in the phone market, but not quite as well. I've seen their product. So interesting seeing Nintendo adapt to that environment. In my opinion, they've priced it out of the South African market. They're trying to go for a more sort of mature consumer, whereas in the States it's priced well below its competitions in the iPod Touch and all the rest of it. So they understand that that's really who they need to aim for, is platforms with 99-cent games that have changed the paradigm completely.
In terms of the 3D mobile gaming trend, do you think this will be something that picked up by the rest of the market?
Definitely. I think especially when we talk about operators and people providing platforms in mobile, they're starting to realize that there's a big player for content and applications. It's interesting seeing their take on it. I know who I would much rather buy my applications from an Android marketplace or an Apple iTunes store than I would from them. But it is interesting seeing the market adapt to the rise of not just games, but applications in general.
Fantastic. Now, another launch, of course, at the end of this month, beginning of April, is the Consumer Protection Act. And an industry that's supposed to be heavy hit is the cellular technology industry. Of course, fixed-term contracts always an issue. Would this be an issue of the past as soon as the CPA comes in? Well,
according to the CPA, cellular operators will have to let you off a 2-year contract within 20 days of written notice. So you could literally give them 20 days and they have to let you out of your contract. Where there's a slight grey area is that in the past they would make you pay your contract, as if you had stayed with them. So you had to pay your way out of the contract. There is draft regulation that'll force them they'll only be able to take up to 10%, I think, of your contract back. Of course, that's draft at the moment, so we're not sure whether that or not that'll go through. So that's the grey area, is how much it'll cost you to get out of your contract. But according to the CPA, they will have to let you out. And they'll have to take your handset back. I think that's the big issue, is before what you had to pay them out for was, the payments that were due on the actual handset. They'll have to take back your second-hand handset now as part of the contract cancellation.
Another grey area is the fact that the legislation came through, but it's not in effect yet. How will people be affected who've got contracts prior to April 1?
Well, the way I understand it, the moment the legislation kicks in, it doesn't really matter when your contract was established. The escape clause effectively in the CPA will void anything that was in your written contract with the cellular operator, so it'll overrule that. All
right, last word, of course, Facebook valued at $65 billion after a big buy-in from General Atlantic. Is this an accurate valuation from their side?
I don't think it is. I think we're seeing another bubble in terms of social media. The valuations for these companies are massive and fantastic for the companies, but there's a level of absurdity there too. And until one of them lists, until we see the Facebook IPO, we have no idea of what they're really worth. So it's interesting seeing a valuation like $65 billion for Facebook. Do I think it's too much? No, but it's heading in that direction. And it'll be interesting seeing a company like that list and seeing what the market really thinks it's worth.
Could we be seeing a dot-com bubble version 2.0?
Not quite. I don't think it'll be on that scale. I think the market's learnt its lesson from then. But it is certainly interesting seeing guesstimation at what companies like Facebook are worth without any of them being listed really.
Well, Simon, thank you very much.
Thank you.